I'm not gonna live in a while. Had a lot going on. I don't know. But it is a sad day, but also a day to remember what we had. But in life, I've had a lot of stuff going on in real life, so it's been a bit hard to care as much as maybe I should about this day. I as of Tuesday, um, my grandma died, so we had her funeral. So that was great. And a lot of other stuff this particular past 2 to 3 months. Last year, I might say, as well. And so I guess it's kind of like when I first got into the EU, when I thought a breakup was the hardest thing in the universe. But as I've gone with the EU, I've also grown and changed as a person. For better or for worse, who knows? We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But I did want to talk about it. But I didn't want to take away from Brennan's video. And I kind of just said what I always say in that video because I didn't want to take away from the hundreds of others that were going to be talking that video. And, I know Brendan said I could go as long as I wanted to, but I didn't want to, ruin the spotlight. I didn't want to go for like 15 minutes talking about whatever, so I try my best to keep it succinct and brief. But I don't know what it's like. Back in 2014, I was 13 years old, and I was a passive fan of Star Wars. I did not know the expanding universe existed. I did not care about it. So I did not care when this buyout happened. It meant nothing to me. I didn't even realize there was a buyout. There was just Star Wars to me. And then came The Force Awakens, and I watched it. I think it was the first Star Wars film I ever watched in theaters. Boy, did I enjoy it. Han Solo being the same character again, deadbeat dad who left his family, that bothered me. But outside of that, I had fun. Maybe it was the hype of seeing it in theaters. I don't know. But I enjoyed it a lot. Still didn't read any like new canon material or play any games or anything like that. I didn't care that much. I just waited for the next film. Episode 8 came out. And I think that film does not have a lot of merit, in my opinion. I think there's a lot wrong with it. Even if you want to say that the Luke and Rey plot's the best part, you still got to sit through the Poe Dameron sections, which I just don't think were that well executed. Neither do I think the Rose and Finn sections were that well executed in that film. It just felt like meandering side plots that ultimately did not matter to the overall plot of the main story, which I didn't like. But let's say you like that, you still have 2/3 of the film, which I think are objectively flawed, even if you don't consider the Luke aspect to be flawed. But regardless, I watched the movie and I was extremely disappointed, as this was part of my childhood, seeing my hero be portrayed that way. And there's ways to make that work, but the problem is you have to set that up in your universe, and the sequels, just like the expanded universe, this was not George Lucas. He didn't have any say in the matter. George Lucas signed off on things in the EU, but as for the sequels, it had nothing to do with George Lucas's vision or anything. Not that George Lucas's opinion really matters when it comes to what's canon, what's not canon. Matters what, he allows, back when the expanded universe was around, it was what he had signed off on, whether he had any involvement in it or not, or actually read it. The sequels didn't. But regardless of that doesn't really matter. The point is they need to, when you're playing somebody else's universe or somebody else's playground or somebody else's bedroom or whatever analogy you want to make, you have to adhere to a certain level of quality and a certain level of consistency when it comes to playing in someone else's, sandbox, which I feel episode 8 didn't do. And so, I walked away from Star Wars for a bit. But I did like Kylo Ren. I liked Adam Driver as an actor. And so I looked up stuff about Kylo Ren on YouTube. I don't remember when, just at some point. And then I found Ryan Kennel's video on Kylo Ren being Dollar Tree version of Jason Solo, Darth Kaitis. Who's that? I don't know. Never heard of that before. And watched a couple more videos. Think I watched Jeremy from Stupid Chainsaw Productions video on Mall Lockdown. What the hell is that? And then I find, these people talking about the Expandiverse. What the hell is that? And then I found Matt Wilkins. Now, I don't even think that was till like 2018 or 2019, because the time that it was probably 2018, because I was watching those videos religiously before I actually bought any of them. Slowly but surely, I bought the books over time. And then came the time of COVID. I finally like deep dived into the Expand universe, and so I started doing all my reviews. So I've been collecting them for a time. I think by the time I finally subscribed to Matt Wilkins, or it was in like the Rebellion era or just finishing up the Dark Times era, somewhere around that time is when I finally found Matt Wilkins. And so from there, I became an Expand universe fan. But I don't have the same understanding of the hurt at 2014, because I wasn't a fan. I was a 13-year-old kid just starting middle school at that point, or turning to 7th grade. I don't remember, but it just wasn't on my mind. But yeah, it's been 10 years, and I like I said, I just had my grandma pass away. I had a lot of other stuff going on. Some of it my fault, some of it not at all. But it's been a rough reality. And as I've done these reviews, I've gotten more. I think I've gotten better at looking at things objectively, and it is therefore isn't hampered my love for the Expanded Universe. It has simply made it more, as I try to be more objective and consistent with my reviews, certain things tend to drop when you're looking at it with that critical analytical perspective, which most people aren't when they're reading something for fun. They're just having fun with it. They're not thinking about it super duper hard. But so because of that, as I've gone through the EU this year, my opinions of A New Jedi Order have lowered, and Legacy of the Force. I still love them. I still think they're great. But all those stories have lowered because I've looked at it with an analytical lens instead of just having fun. But regardless of that, and even when I make my videos of the Bounty Hunter Wars, and I harp on how bad it is. Part of being on YouTube is putting on this sort of persona. I especially when it comes to retorting other people online, I tend to get very Negan from The Walking Dead, or very full of myself, like I am right and you are wrong. But that's all really just an act. Like I don't actually if you like Bounty Hunter Wars, that's fine. Like I don't hate Bounty Hunter Wars that much. I mean, the throwing the book was genuine, but like I don't actually hate that series that much. Like I don't really hate anything. Sometimes I would like to hate things, whether this be in reality with like real life stuff, or in fiction. I really want to sometimes I just really want to be nasty and rude and I'm right, you're wrong, get behind me, Satan. I'm just kidding. But I can't. There's something about me. I physically can't find it in me to just hate completely and utterly. Maybe that's a strength. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But so, when I do those sort of reviews and stuff where I'm being rather negative, which isn't often, I do probably not like that book, but I'm harping up the anger for entertainment. I don't actually hate it that much. But I say all this because despite, no matter how much I dislike something in the Expanded Universe or love something in the Expanded Universe, I still love it as a whole for the continuity, 30 plus years of history that it has brought, and I want to see that continued because it doesn't truly end. And there have been plenty of franchises that have had continuations, long after they ended. This isn't a very good example, but like Willow had novels that were written in the 90s, but then they also made that TV show. Now, of course, that probably retconned all of the novels, but, kind of like Star Wars. But for those who didn't read the book and didn't know that the book existed, that show was their continuation. If they liked it, they might not have liked it. But that was years after the fact. That movie came out in the 90s or the 80s or whatever. In the 80s, I think, actually. So that stuff happens. But or Star Trek got the Coda trilogy to finish it off. Was that good? That depends on who you ask. I've talked to some people who don't necessarily think it was, but regardless, they got a conclusion, you know. And there's a lot of fear behind a continuation. And that might be justified, but I feel like a lot of people don't. It's not even about will it be ruined? It's well, it was already ruined. It sucked since like 2008. Should stay dead. And I think that's overtly negative and unnecessary. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't like reading stories, or you think stuff's bad, or you think it's been dying since a particular time, then more stories set in that world you can just ignore, because you've already been ignoring stories. So to me, it makes no sense to not do it. I get the fear of it being ruined, but don't we have 30 plus years of history to enjoy anyway? Worst case scenario, if they write more books and they're not up to par with the EU, we know the books that are consistently good or mostly good from 1970 to 2014. We have that gap there. We know, and if all the books suck, if we get a continuation, we can be like, well, everything 2025 onward, that's bad. Don't touch it. You can make that determination for yourself. But I don't know, the idea of just being like, no, they shouldn't make more because it might be bad, just seems a bit, to me, it feels a bit selfish. Like, well, I don't want it tarnished. So if other people want a continuation, well, screw them. I hope Lucasfilm doesn't. To me, it just seems like, because if you don't like it, then you just don't read it. You move on with your life. You go read something else, or you read the old stuff. Why ruin it for people who might want a continuation? Because ultimately it's all this vitriol of Disney Star Wars sucks, or the EU shouldn't be continued, that is probably hindering Lucasfilm from making more, outside of their own personal vanity of being upset that people want more instead of consuming their new content. But everything being asked after these 10 years is not unreasonable. A parallel timeline to the main one, which is the canon stuff, and that's fine. TV shows, they get their TV shows, their movies, their video games, their short stories, their comic books, this and that. No one's telling them to stop that. We just want a couple novels and a couple comics, like every year or so. I mean, mainly for me, I just want an end to the Luke storyline, up to the Legacy comics, and I'd be happy. That'd be it for me. Like, would I like it to continue indefinitely? Yeah, but really, I don't think the EU needs to be continued. I think it needs to be concluded. And I think that's the mindset we need to adapt moving forward for the expanded universe movement. I think that's something we need to start maybe shifting the dialogue from continue to the EU to conclude or finish the EU. And I think that might be a more viable slogan for Lucasfilm to maybe listen. And it has been a decade, but I don't think it's necessarily time to give up. These stories mean a lot to people. They help us get through some tough times, whether that be a family member who just passed away, or just a whole other drama that might be going on in your life. These books help. And that means something, and it has meant something to a lot of people. And maybe not everything's your cup of tea, but whether you like this book or you don't like that book, I would never want to hinder somebody from having more to enjoy. I don't like Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy, but if somebody did, good for them. I'm so glad they find enjoyment in that, because this world is hard, this world is rough, and there's so much darkness in it. Why am I going to hinder their happiness in something that they enjoy if they enjoy it? Same thing with, like, I don't know, like, I hate approaching storm, but if somebody somehow finds enjoyment out of that, like, praise be to them for being able to do that. Like, good for them. But I hope you all check out Brennan's video. It's going to be a masterpiece. I don't have too much to say, really. I just want to go a little bit more in depth than I would have had the ability to in that video. I want to leave the spotlight for other people, but the EU lives on. It is not dead. It is not over. It's not time to give up. I know a decade, it feels like, why even bother? Who cares anymore? Just enjoy what we have. And you can still enjoy what we have already, but I think it's still worth fighting for more, because I think it's unfair to have a story unconcluded. We kept Lucasfilm alive, or the fans back in the 90s did, back before the prequels were made. Not me. I wasn't alive in the 90s, but Star Wars wouldn't be here if not for the fans. Ultimately. Episode 4 wasn't even meant to be this genre-defining film. It was something made out of passion, and luckily people enjoyed it, but no one cared back then about sci-fi as much. Not that it's really sci-fi, it's more fantasy, but I had to get going. But long live the expanded universe. And hopefully one day we get more. Anyway, see you later. Bye-bye. Till next time.